Well, hello. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a great day. It's Wednesday, about 12:45. Just getting ready to give us our video lecture. A couple of housekeeping notes before we jump off. The quizzes. Last week there was a couple people that had various reasons for missing the quiz, so I reopened it for them. And then there was another person that same kind of thing had a story. So I figured to be fair to everyone, give everyone an opportunity, and depending on each person's circumstances, figure out how to grade it and so on. If you look at the syllabus, there is a policy for late work, but if you guys have a good story, and I'll try to work with you all. But long story short, I reopened the quiz. I don't know if you noticed that someone's going to be completing it today. So once that final quiz is in, then I will sit down for hours and just grade all the quizzes. So if you're wondering, hey, where's my quiz grade? That's the deal with that. So let me just pull up our grade book real quick and see where we are. Because I know Jenny's been grading the DQs and giving everybody feedback for APA issues in regard things of that nature. Let's see where we're at. So so we got a couple there. Yeah, so all the quizzes, still waiting on that one. Looks like almost everyone has done DQ7. So, we're almost there with all the grading. Let me think what else is on tap for today. Now, the community resource paper, I've been getting some calls for people needing suggestions for where to go, contacts. That is due November 6th, so don't put it off to the last minute. That's something that I've been every single lecture preaching, saying, hey, set up the appointment so you got plenty of time to write up the paper. Sometimes things happen, people cancel on you, their dog get hit by a car, lightning struck their house, who knows what. But, make sure that you have those appointments done. Many of you probably have, but get that in by the 6th of November. And I think that's pretty much it. What I'll be doing is hopefully when I submit when I send you things out on the announcements, like newspaper articles or obviously the video lectures, but like the clinical judgment article or vocational evaluation example, hopefully you do spend a few minutes to look at those. It's up to you. I'm probably going to be putting up another one today after the lecture about rehabilitation plans. Since today's lecture is on planning and preparing the rehabilitation program, well, let me just jump into that right now. Basically, what that has to do with, if you're in the public sector, IPE, Individualized Plan for Employment. Now, if you go into the files section, syllabus, grades, all that over there, one of them is the files. If you scroll down, you'll see a lot of IPE documents from the Maryland State Agency, DOORS, Division of Rehabilitation Services, where there'll be like a decision-making grid where they kind of go through. They'll actually have the IPE rehab plan that is up there. That's this guy. See how it says Individualized Plan for Employment. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And what I'd probably like to do is put up a private example. So you see, you got the public, you got the forms, you got the decision-making tree, you actually have the training. It's probably a couple years old, but it's the training that if you got a job there, so you graduate with your master's degree, and you got your CRC, and now you're starting at the Maryland State Agency, which is DOORS, then there's PowerPoint slides to train you how to do an IP. So it's all right there for you. So hint, hint, take a look at it. So preparing and planning the rehab program. So all the stuff that we talked about, the medical evaluation, the psychological evaluation, doing the clinical interview or the intake interview, doing the vocational evaluation. Now that we've done those pieces, or if the person didn't have a voc eval or voc assessment, they had the alternative for that. Now we're in a position to basically develop our rehabilitation plan / IPE on helping this person obtain what employment goals that they want to do. So really what a rehabilitation plan or IPE is to spell out all the steps involved of how we're going to assist client consumer X going from point A to point B, which is point B is full-time gainful employment, hopefully. So all of these pieces of the puzzle are data points like the interview, the med-eval, the psych-eval, and so on. And sometimes there might be other ones. Like we talked about functional capacity evaluation. We've talked about assistive technology evaluations. Maybe they have a diagnosis like, paraplegia, and they need training on how to drive a van and get a modified van and all that stuff. That would go in your rehabilitation plan. And now, of course, it's got to be feasible. So again, the person with an IQ of 50, we're not going to say we're going to make you a rocket scientist, because that's a waste of everybody's time and money. So the IPE or the rehab plan must be feasible, obtainable, realistic. I don't want to just put a plan together that has a 1% chance of being successful. No, I'd rather have one that has like a 90% chance of being successful. You're also going to take into consideration other extraneous variables. Like for some clients/consumers, they might not be a variable at all, childcare. But if you're a single mom, that's going to be a critical make or break deal. If I don't have childcare, I'm not working no matter what comes out of your mouth, Mr. Rehab Counselor. Transportation, if they can't get there, well then are they going to keep the job? No. Maybe housing. It's just going to depend. Every case is going to be different. A big part of this is duration and cost. So we want to have a specified timeline of how long this program is going to take and how much money is it going to cost, because it's not going to be an open-ended deal. That's just not how it works. Now, in the private sector, if I would forget, say I'm sending someone to college and I forgot to put a computer in there, and that could be coming out of my pocket, or maybe my boss's pocket. Again, in the public sector, it's not going to be that cutthroat and hard. It's going to be nice and fuzzy and warm and more forgiving. But in the private sector, if I forget to put something in there, say hypothetically I screwed up and I said, 1 year of schooling and it's 2. That extra year of schooling is either going to be paid for from my company or perhaps me, or who knows, maybe it's going to be fought out in court, but it will not be a pleasant day for me. Now, client involvement, we've talked about this many, many times. We need to have the client/consumer involved in all these steps that we've talked about, especially at this step, because we want them to buy into our rehabilitation plan and make it theirs, because they're going to have to put in the time, the energy, study, all the things that you guys are doing in these classes, they're going to have to do, and then, like you, probably find a job once this is over. So that kind of really gets to the informed choice. So once you become a counselor, you're going to hear informed choice for your clients. So, if we're going to talk the talk, let's walk the walk. We need to make sure they understand what they're basically getting themselves into, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, and their responsibilities and my responsibilities and so on. I'm not doing all the work for them. Forget that. That's not going to be a recipe for success. Usually I like to try to tell them, hey, we're working as a team. You might not even want to use percentages, but say like 50-50. I'm going to be working for you, but you're also going to be doing work on your end as well. And obviously when they go to work, I'm not going to hold their hand for the rest of their life, so they need to be aware of what's coming down the pike. So it's pretty obvious that we need their involvement in setting the goals and developing the plan. Hopefully we can increase their motivation and basically take responsibility, because we're investing in them. And then the ball is going to be in their court, so they're going to have to do some work. So let's talk about the vocational planning. So obviously goal setting, normally that's going to be competitive employment, meaning a job that anyone out there in the world can get, and it's going to be competitive, meaning people fighting for that job. Sometimes with a severe diagnosis, maybe competitive employment's not going to be a possibility. Maybe they can only work like in a shelter workshop or whatever. Or maybe they can only work part-time, but it could still be competitive employment, but just part-time. That's all going to flow from the medical data and the psychological data and some other variables. Information processing. Now, in the private sector, how this plays out is when we developed a rehabilitation plan, we would have a meeting at the attorney's office for the client, and we would go through the plan. And I would have not only the client sign it, but their attorney sign it. So then they've made the decision. They're informed, it's in writing, and it's a contract, and that's that. Now, again, in the public sector, it's a little different, where people could keep coming back and back and back to change their IPEs. That's another problem and another story for another day. We talked about the planning. It's going to have the objectives, the timeline, the costs, the services involved, what other equipment they might need, a van, a computer, modifying their house, who knows what, but it's all going to be in there. And then once we put this together, how are we going to monitor progress or lack thereof? I mean, for me in the private sector, I'd be calling my people every week at least and sending them emails and staying on top of them and talking to their teachers and visiting them on campus and getting them books and helping them get job leads and maybe doing a job analysis, finding them employment opportunities, and then, again, the ball's in their court. So goal setting, it's up to us to make sure the goals that we're suggesting and recommending are realistic, and if they're not, we're going to have to talk with them and hopefully try to come up with some goals that are obtainable. Being employed in our society is so very important. It's basically who we are, what we do, what kind of lifestyle we can have, what kind of support and resources we have for our family, if we can even have a family, who knows what. But so this is all connected. It's very, very important. Now, some people are going to process this information differently than others. A person with a PhD is going to be processing this information differently than an 18-year-old kid that, went through special ed and might have a diagnosis of, autism or learning disability. It doesn't matter, fill in the blank. We need to make sure they understand what's going on here and so on. Part of this will have occupational information, like the labor market data, what are the jobs paying. I'll send you out the rehab plan in the private sector, and you'll see on page 1 and 2 where we really have the nuts and bolts of what these jobs are going to pay in a specific range. And the reason the range is important, because if we do all this stuff and then we get this job offer and then the person turns it down because of who knows what, wait a minute. You said at the end of the road, if we found you a job for $15 to $20 an hour, you're going to take it. This job pays $18.75. What's going on here? I've worked with you for 2 years. Now, in the private sector, that might be the end. Their case might be closed, and that's the end of them. Public sector, again, it's going to be a little bit more forgiving and gentle and kinder and whatever. But the different markets handle problems differently, I guess. We've all talked about the occupational information. They should know if they're going down this rehab plan or IPE, what to expect at the end of the day. If they don't, then we just didn't do our job, quite frankly. So some things like, wages, growth of the occupation, what kind of licensure they might need or equipment, or what's the environment they're going to be working in, and so on and so on. Decision making, again, this is going to be vary depending on if you're in the private sector and they got an attorney that's paid to look out for them, or if it's an adult, or if it's a minor child. So decision making, depending on what kind of client/consumer working with, we need to carefully think about it and make sure that we present our information appropriately, giving who they are. So for me, just some things off the top of my head. So when we're developing the rehab plan, some common sense thing is labor market data. What are the jobs going to pay? What kind of benefits are there? How many jobs are available in that state, county, and city? Now, maybe in the public sector you wouldn't really go that deep, but to me, as a rehabilitation counselor, that's information that I certainly can ascertain, and I certainly can give that to them without too much cost or effort. Put the cards on the table, almost like an accounting balance sheet. Here's the pros, here's the cons. What do you want to do? Really, the bottom line is coming up with a realistic plan that can improve the quality of life of your client/consumer and also fit who they are, their diagnosis or diagnoses, their ability to lift, concentrate, walk, talk, sit, their emotional stability, their psychological or psychiatric issues. All these things need to be taken into consideration when we're planning for their future. So part of the rehabilitation plans or IPEs would be, again, reasonable goals, getting their buy-in, getting them motivated, describing the steps involved to go from point A to point B in great detail, setting deadlines for each step of the way, each party's responsibilities. Now, this might say, oh, yeah, no big deal, but sometimes if the other party, client/consumer, does not hold up their end of their deal, I don't want them to come back and say, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know this could happen if I never showed up for work or showed up for school or who knows what. So they need to know all their responsibilities. And to me, I put it in writing, so then they can't be, well, I never heard that, or you never told me that. Well, here it is in my rehab plan, and here's your signature. So you tell me. And then the outcomes. I mean, you could see how that's just going to be obviously self-evident, really. So how do we do when we get to the action self-evaluation phase? To me, this is like my monthly progress reports. So all the calls I make, when I talk to the teachers, when I see them at school, when I'm doing whatever, that gets put into a report. And then again, on my end, would be sent out to both attorneys, the attorney for the client and the attorney for the employer or the insurance company. So the progress is clear. If you're not doing that type of reporting in the public sector, or if you work for a CRP, let's just make sure that we're somehow monitoring the progress or lack thereof. No rehabilitation plan is perfect. We try to do the best. I'm a human being, you're a human being. We try to do the best that we can with the information at hand, and really importantly, with the resources that we have available. If it was up to me, I'd like to spend $1 million on every client to get them whatever they want. But in the real world, there are limitations to what kind of services and resources we have available. The IP is mandated by the current state, federal vocational rehabilitation system laws. The IPE, as you can see, you got the forms in there. I would print them out when we're talking about this, or print them out later and look at it. It's going to have the rehab goal, the timelines, the services required to achieve said goal, each party's responsibilities, the client's view, the signatures of the client, the counselor, and other people that are involved in the plan. Like in the private sector, it will be both attorneys, maybe the insurance company, and so on. So you can see how the vocational rehabilitation goal is going to guide the IP, because whatever we come up with in our assessment and evaluation, it should be spelled out in the IP/rehab plan, and everything should flow logically, hopefully. So in my opinion, effective planning and communication of our plan is so very, very important. It will avoid problems down the road if we are very clear and have a logical, obtainable, realistic plan for them. They should be involved in all the steps along the way, the med psych eval, the vocational eval/assessment, our planning for this. I mean, to me, I always like to have homework assignments where, okay, you want training X. When you go home, go on your computer, go to the ONET, pull up job X, do the homework, read about it, bring it back to our next session, and let's talk turkey. They should definitely totally understand the rehabilitation goal and where we're going, so there are no surprises. I want my client/consumer to be informed. Informed choice is it's just not like a term, it's really the real world. So we need to make sure that they totally understand what's going on. And again, monitoring the progress is so very important, because if we're not keeping tabs on what's going on, things can get off the track real easy. And then obviously if we get off the track, they stop going to school, they're failing their courses, well then that's a problem, because our goal to go to point B, now we got a huge problem. You're failing your classes, you're not going to be a qualified candidate for job X. So that is the chapter in a nutshell. Let me see how many, because I know, just pull up our student profiles. We only have a couple student profiles in here. I really would hope that you guys would send in your resume, and I don't know if we even started building the small pictures. I know Jenny's working on this. See, for me, I usually like to have a face and a name to go with it. But closing note, just think about, and hopefully you will send in your resume so Jenny can put you into the student profile section. And besides that, I think we're on track. I think everything's going well. If you need anything, reach out to either Jenny or myself, and we'll be happy to help. And again, just to recap kind of like what we talked about, hint, hint, recap with your clients, we'll be going through the quizzes. Probably, those grades will probably start showing up probably Friday, Saturday, something like that. It will take some time to go through all the quizzes. We talked about the assignments coming down the pike. Hopefully by now you have your site visit all set up. Hopefully you've already, went out there for a community resource paper. So hopefully we're not going to have anybody saying, oh, they canceled on me, I'm going to be late on my paper. and just keep knocking them out. Oh, final thought. I will be probably posting another quiz because we're supposed to have 5 is what the syllabus says. So I will probably send out, well, I'd like to get these other quizzes. We've been trying to work with people. I will probably send out the second quiz in a couple days and then give you like a week to turn it in. That should be cool on your end. If you guys, again, need something, just please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.